When Premier Danielle Smith reached for the Notwithstanding Clause to end the Alberta teacher strike, she didn't just settle a provincial labor dispute. She set a national precedent that rocks the very foundation of Canadian collective bargaining rights. Section 33 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Notwithstanding Clause, was designed as a constitutional pressure valve, allowing governments to override certain rights temporarily in extraordinary circumstances. It was never meant to become a routine tool for avoiding political inconvenience. Yet Smith's decision to wield it to break a lawful strike does exactly that. So let's be clear about what's being overridden. In 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled in Saskatchewan Federation of Labor versus Saskatchewan that the right to strike is constitutionally protected as part of freedom of association under Section 2D of the Charter. The court recognized that a worker's ability to withdraw their labor is essential to meaningful collective bargaining. Without that power, bargaining becomes a polite form of begging. By invoking Section 33, Smith is admitting that her government's legislation likely violates that charter right, and she's doing it anyway. The message is unmistakable. When constitutional protections stand in the way of political expediency, they can simply be swept aside. This is not a minor legal footnote. It's a profound shift in how governments engage with constitutional democracy. The Charter exists to balance majority power with individual and collective rights, to ensure that even unpopular groups, like striking workers, are protected from the heavy hand of the state. Using the Notwithstanding Clause as a first resort in a labor standoff undermines that balance. It turns what should be a constitutional safeguard into a political shortcut. The implications reach far beyond Alberta. In recent years, we've seen the Notwithstanding Clause used with increasing boldness. Quebec to uphold its secularism law. Ontario's Doug Ford threatening it against education workers in 2022. Each time, the outcry fades a little faster. Each time, the clause grows a little less exceptional. Smith's use of it to impose a back-to-work order accelerates that normalization. If other provinces follow her lead, the right to strike across Canada becomes effectively optional, available only when governments choose not to extinguish it. That's a dangerous precedent for all Canadian workers, unionized or not. Collective bargaining depends on mutual constraint. Employers, including governments, must negotiate in good faith, and workers must exercise their rights responsibly. Invoking Section 33 destroys that equilibrium. It replaces negotiation with compulsion and constitutional accountability with political willpower. Supporters will argue that Smith is acting to protect students and families, but that's a false choice. There are always political costs to strikes, just as there are costs to democracy itself. Rights that matter most are those that inconvenience power. What Alberta's government has done is use the Charter's escape hatch not to defend the public good, but to silence opposition. That may bring short-term order to classrooms, but it invites long-term chaos to Canada's constitutional order. The Supreme Court's recognition of the right to strike was a hard-won milestone in the evolution of Canadian labor rights. It placed our democracy among those that understand that workplace justice is part of human dignity. Smith's legislation, shielded by the Notwithstanding Clause, drags that progress backward. Alberta's teachers may be the immediate target, but every Canadian worker should be paying attention. When one government decides that constitutional rights are expendable, it lowers the bar for all others. Today it's education. Tomorrow it could be healthcare, transportation, or public service. The Notwithstanding Clause was never meant to end debates. It was meant to preserve them. Smith's use of it ends not only a strike, but a conversation about fairness, rights, and respect for the people who make Alberta's schools and Canada's democracy work.